Unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica from the scrapbooks of Adrian Freighter. When the teenage Hector Wright walked into the Seba United team in the mid-1980s, it was as if he had walked into a university. As awaiting there to help him develop his game were two of Jamaica's most accomplished midfield players, Alton Noah Sterling and Allan Latty. To say young Hector, who was popularly known as Eki, was a gifted player would be an understatement. In addition to being a dominant player representing Herbert Morrison in the All-daCosta Cup,
Would be dangerous for receiver shot, not blocked, Hector Wright!
He also knew what success was at an early age, as he was a part of the St.James under-16 team, which was crowned national under-16 champions. As a junior player, Hector was much feared, as in addition to his goal-scoring prowess, his lethal left foot, which he regularly used to crack impressive 30 and 40 yards passes, as well as to drive fear into goalkeepers, was already generating comparison with some of Jamaica's most feared kickers of the ball. After entering Herbert Morrison in 1980, the young Hector quickly distinguished himself, holding his own amongst much older players. After showing his worth in guiding St. James first to the semi-final of the All-Island under-16 competition with an impressive performance when he scored 3 times in St. James's 9-1 win over St. Ann, and then went on to the final to be equally potent, there was absolutely no question that he was a special player, and Seba sent him overseas to get a taste of international football with Kiffin in Finland. In 1986, Hector became a part of history and also created personal history when he scored the lone goal in Herbert Morrison's 1-0 win over Russies in the All-daCosta Cup final. With a All-daCosta Cup title on his resume, Hector turned his attention to the National Premier League, where he proved he was able to hold his own against the nation's best players. By 1988, he was not only knocking on the door of the national team, but actually kicking down the door. The coaches who heard him had no choice but to answer his call, and before long, he was into the national team, where he spent the next 10 years playing 70 games and scoring 16 goals, which included some of the most beautiful goals ever seen in the national colours. In this edition of Lest You Forget, I will be looking back at a story I wrote for the Western Mirror in 1988 when Hector Wright was on the verge of making the national team. The story, which was published under the headline Hector Wright on the National Spotlight, published on the 20th of February 1988, read as follows. In another week or two, the national football squad to commence training for the upcoming World Cup elimination games is expected to be announced. According to recently selected national coach Jeffrey Maxwell, of the present crop of young footballers in Jamaica, in his opinion, only Herbert Morrison's and Seba United's dynamic midfielder Hector Wright seems ready for the rigors of senior football. The pronouncement of Mr. Maxwell speaks well for the talented young Wright. His outstanding display in the recently concluded 1987 schoolboy football season, in which he displayed the type of brilliance and maturity seldom seen in youngsters his age, must have gone a long way in convincing the coach of his exceptional ability. Young Wright, who is a product of Montego Bay, began his football career at a very tender age under the guidance of his older brother Shadrick, who is a former star schoolboy footballer for both Russies High School and Herbert Morrison Technical, and presently represents Seba United. Hector's career in competitive football began at Chetwood Primary School, where he stood out among his peers because of his early exposure to the game. After leaving Chetwood, Herbert Morrison Comprehensive became the recipient of Wright's budding talent. He exploded on the under-16 circuit like a colossus and gave many a distinguished performances for his new school. The year 1984 was a special year for Hector. He continued to dominate the under-16 competition and his remarkable ability gained him a place on the All-daCosta Cup team. While campaigning for his school, Hector was also a member of the St.James Under-16 team that won the national Under-16 competition. Since gaining his big break in 1984, Hector has not looked back. He has continued to grow from strength to strength. In 1986, he was one of the chief architects behind Herbert Morrison's winning the coveted All-daCosta Cup for the first time in its history. In 1987, although Herbert Morrison failed to reproduce their brilliant 1986 All-daCosta Cup winning form, Wright, who was on semi-professional duties in Finland prior to the start of the competition, continued to demonstrate his ability as a player of much class. Hector was selected to represent the National All School team that contested the Caribbean All School Championship, which Jamaica won in convincing fashion. He was clearly the most outstanding player in the championship. Following the Caribbean Championship, he played an integral part in the All-daCosta Cup team, winning the Northern Food Cup over their all-manning counterparts. His scintillating performance in that game won him the Toya Trophy for being the most outstanding player in the game. With the 1987 schoolboy season behind him, Wright has now turned his attention to the National Premier League competition, where he has been doing quite well for national champion Seba United.
Harris is free. Let's see what he'll do. Harris is free. Well, he goes for the goal, and it's in the back of the net. Excellent shot by Hector Wright. And Leroy Gray really beaten on the near post. You see, Hector Wright.
Players of the caliber of Alton Noah Sterling and Allan Latty, two seasoned midfield generals to partner him, plus the presence of his brother Chadwick on the team, Hector is expected to be at home in Seba's midfield, with an added opportunity to impress the national selectors. Hector is expected to be firing on all cylinders in the National Premier League semi-final second leg tomorrow for Seba as they continue their bid to retain their title against arch-rivals Wadada. Although it is generally believed that talented youngsters are usually unable to cope with senior football, I believe that with Hector there will be a difference. The fact that he has had a taste of semi-professional football playing for a Kiffin club in the Championship Junior League in Finland, and the added fact that he has developed through all the various stages of national football, his potential, exposure and maturity should ensure that he fits in. Now looking back at Hector's colossal impact on national football almost 40 years later, there is absolutely no question in my mind that his story is one of those unforgettable stories in Western Jamaica and Jamaica's football. Unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica from the scrapbooks of Adrian Freighter. Before you go, please remember to subscribe. For the new subscribers who missed my earlier videos, you can find them by typing my name in your YouTube search bar.